In this lesson, we will study about the variant of else if statement known as elif. So let's see this code where we are taking the marks of 5 subjects on line number 1, then on line number 2 and 3 we are finding the average and displaying that. Then these are the lines where we are displaying a message based on the average value. I have just considered two values, that average is greater than equal to 90 or average is greater than equal to 80. But we can have the other ranges as well. See these two lines. After the else on line number 6, we have another if statement. We know that we need this else here so that if average is greater than 90, for example 92, the else block will not execute and hence we will just see the output of line number 5. But for such cases where the else is starting with another if statement, with a condition of course, instead of writing that as else and then an if statement, we can write elif. So I will comment these three lines for the comparison purpose and let's write elif statement. Now elif means else if and therefore there will be a condition after that. And then we can write the same print statement. So now compare line number 6, 7 and 8 and line number 9 and 10. Both are doing the same thing. So elif is just a shortcut for an else followed by an if statement. So instead of two lines we can do it in one line, plus we do not need an extra indentation. Let's enter some bigger values so that the average is greater than 90. And you can see only the first message is displayed. Here is the complete code for different messages for the different range of average values, and you can see we have nested else and ifs. I will copy this code into a new file and now let's change else if to elif. The first case is on line number 6 and 7. On line number 8 we have double indentation because that print statement is inside the block of line number 7 if statement, and that if statement is starting with one indentation because that is a nested if statement. But when I change that to elif, you can see that now on line number 7 we should have only one indentation. So I will remove one from there. Now this else of line number 8 is linked to the if statement of line number 6. So this must start from the same level, so I should remove this indentation as well. Now I have an else on line number 8 followed by an if statement on line number 9. So I can change those to elif. The print statement on line number 9 has 3 indentations, but it should have only one. Likewise, I will change other else and if to elif. The last elif is for average greater than equal to 50. So if I want to have something after that, like if it is not greater than equal to 50, meaning that it will be less than 50, so now I can write a simple else statement. And this else on line number 14 is linked with the if of the line number 12. I don't know what I should write here. Maybe you should repeat the semester. Please note very carefully that all these ifs are not independent ifs. For example, the if of line number 6 is still a nested if of the outer if of line number 4. Then if of line number 8 is a nested if of the if statement of line number 6, and so on for the other ifs. The good thing is that we do not need to write those lengthy indentations. Here is the comparison of both programs. You can see the one on the left side using the elif statement is more compact and more readable. Now let me clear one point here. It's not always a case that we can convert an else and associated if to elif. For example, see this code here which finds the roots of the quadratic equation. I'm taking the coefficients of quadratic equation as a, b and c. Then this is the discriminant calculation as b square minus 4ac. Then depending upon if discriminant is positive or negative, we are doing these calculations to find the roots of that equation and finally printing those roots. I hope you know that in a quadratic equation, the coefficient a cannot be 0. b and c can be 0, but a must be non-zero. Because if a will be 0, it will not be a quadratic equation and this solution will generate an error. Because in quadratic equation formula, we have 2a as the denominator, and when a will be 0, this division by 0 will cause the error. So I want to put a condition in this program so that a must not be 0. And if user enters a as 0, I will display him an appropriate message. So I can say that if a is 0, I will display a message. and otherwise I will be doing all these calculations. So I will put these calculations inside the else block. Now if you see this else and this if, can we convert those to elif? The answer is no, because of this statement in between the two. So remember that only when we have an if statement immediately after the else statement, only then we can convert those to elif, and not for these kind of cases. So I hope this was not a difficult concept, and before moving to the task of the lab manual, I will explain one more thing. We have used if statements and mostly the conditions were on the numeric values. We can also apply the if statement with a condition on the data type of some variable. For example, I am taking the day and month from the user in this code like we were doing in the last task of the last lesson. We know that day and month should be integers. So instead of val, I can use int over here. But still a user can enter a floating value, but that will get converted into an integer value. Another way can be applying an if statement on the type of the variable. We know we have a built-in function type which gives us the data type of a variable. So I will change this back to a val. And here I am saying that if type of variable d is not int, or the type of variable m is not int, then I must display some message like day and month should be integers. And else here means that both are of integer data type, then I should do all those calculations that we discussed in the last lesson. But for demonstration purpose over here, I am writing a simple print statement. So if day is 2.3, which is not an integer, we are getting the correct output from the program. And if both are integers, the else block is executed. Now let's see the last task of the lab manual. The task is electricity bill calculator. The user will enter the total units consumed and the program will display the total amount of bill. Bill calculation rules are given in this table. Basically there are different unit slabs according to which a bill is calculated. The rates I have written over here are not the updated rates, but the logic of the program will be same if we have the updated rates as well. So let's read this table carefully. It says that for first 100 units, the rate is 13.85 rupees per unit. Then for units 101 to 200, the rate is 15.86 per unit. Now be careful here. If the units consumed are 150 for example, it means that on first 100 units, the rate will be 13.85 and on the remaining units which are 50, the rate will be 15.86. You shouldn't think that the rate will be 15.86 on all 150 units. This is really important point to consider for this task. Similarly, we have other slabs for the different amount of units. Like from 201 to 300 units, the rate is 16.83. Then we have other slabs. After the units against different unit slabs, there are some extra charges as well. For example, there is Neelam Jahlam surcharge and that is fixed to 0.1 rupees per unit. Then there is FC surcharge and this is also fixed and the value is 0.43 rupees per unit. Then there are TV charges and they are not even dependent on the units. The amount is fixed to 35 rupees. And finally, after all these charges, 12% GST is applied on top of that. How can you increase some variable value by 12%? Simplest is if you multiply a variable x with 1.12, whatever was the previous value of x, that will get increased by 12%. There is one more thing to do in this task. You know that for every bill there is a due date and if it is not paid by that due date, extra charges are imposed on the consumer. Those extra charges are 8.34% of the total bill amount. So your program will take the units from the user, will display the bill amount payable within the due date and also the amount payable after the due date. You should use elif instead of else if where applicable. So that's all from this lesson. Thanks for watching.